Welcome to newlytrading.com. News on some of the newest publicly traded companies on the TSXV, OTC, and on the CSE exchanges. Newly Trading is brought to you by thenewswire.com, the most affordable newswire service in North America. Get started with your free trial. Today we're talking with Brian Ganz of Security Devices International. Their trading symbol is SDZ on the CSE exchange. Good day, Brian.
Good day. How are you doing, Jim?
Very well. Brian, maybe a place to start is you giving us a little of your background and your public market experience, and then maybe a little history on SDI.
I am a lawyer by training. But I'm a reformed attorney, so I never practiced. I went to Columbia Law School, but I've spent my entire career in business, initially as a registered investment advisor for the early part of my career. And then I ended up taking over a family business, and that led to being involved in a number of turnarounds. During that period of time, I was fortunate enough to be on the boards of a number of different public companies. I think Security Devices is the third public company that I'm on the board of. And in all cases, because of my legal and accounting background, I was always head of the audit committee. So I have a background in both law and accounting.
Well, Security Devices International, you state it's a technology company, but it specializes in a very unique area: personal security devices, military, law enforcement, corrections, and private security. But the company develops and manufactures innovative, less lethal equipment and munitions. Very unique space. Can you give me a little history of how the company got started and how you kind of got focused on this very unique market?
This space, which is sort of generically known as less lethal when dealing with the law enforcement side of the world, and non-lethal when dealing with the military side of the world. Exactly the same products, but the military is less worried about being sued, so they're happy to use the words non-lethal. There's been, over the last 15 or 20 years, a push to get away from using deadly force in every encounter. And this has probably been gaining traction, as you know, in the last couple of years, particularly here in the United States, where there's just been a lot of shootings of unarmed people by the police force. So there's been a real community outcry for the police to engage suspects with less than lethal force. Security Devices originally got into this market because they wanted to develop what I can only call a taser bullet. Now, taser, of course, is a brand name, but it's sort of become generically how people refer to a conductive electric device. And a conductive electric device is a device that gives a shock to a person, producing a sinusoidal wave that will render them incapable of movement for a number of minutes. The problem with taser, the limitation with taser, has always been that it's a very, very short range device. So it's effective up to 21 feet, but practically it's really effective up to around 15 feet. So what SDI wanted to do was to take all the workings of a taser, and instead of having them in your hand, we would fire a projectile, and the battery and motherboard would be in the projectile, and we could fire that projectile accurately at 100 or 150 feet so that we could engage somebody at a significant standoff distance. That conductive electric device, which we call the WEP, the wireless electronic projectile, never made it to market. But in developing this device, they had to come up with this collapsible head technology because the round, the conductive electric device, the WEP, was so heavy that if they didn't have a collapsible head on the impact with a suspect, it would kill the suspect. So they had to have some way to soften the blow, so to speak. And they developed this piston-driven collapsible head design. And they then decided we could use this for 40 millimeter impact rounds. And that was really the genesis of security devices. So the security devices developed what's called the BIP, the blunt impact projectile. And that's become somewhat of the gold standard for law enforcement using less lethal weapons to engage suspects at distances. And when you get hit with one, it really is going to ruin your day. So this gives up the officers a chance to put somebody down at great distances and then get the cuffs on them. And it's a very, very effective, less lethal weapon.
How are you in the market right now? How's the market responding to this product? How big is the market? And kind of what are the next milestones for SDI?
Okay, so when I joined the company 2 years ago, the company was struggling to really break into this market. And it was struggling to break into this market for a couple of reasons. One, the law enforcement market is a very parochial market. And in order to break into the market, you really need to put on a demonstration for law enforcement. So that means you need a sales force in the field putting on a demonstration. And economically, it makes no sense for us to go out and visit the 18,500 law enforcement agencies in the United States and put on a $2,000 demonstration in the hopes of getting a $3,000 order. So because of the fragmented nature of law enforcement in the U.S., this really was not, in my opinion, a viable economic model. And we were losing out to competitors of ours like Safariland and Amtech Less Lethal that had a large array of products from body armor to leg restraints to all sorts of other things that the law enforcement agencies needed to buy. And the model didn't really work economically. So when I came on board, I really wanted to pivot from going after law enforcement to going after the much larger consumer market and private security market. And in order to do that, we had to create less lethal weapons that were not regulated by the ATF and not regulated by the State Department. So we've been working on developing new personal security devices that are handheld devices that will be firing chemical irritant rounds. And the name of these new devices is Byrna, B-Y-R-N-A. And it's, frankly, it's the way we say burner in Boston. It's the Byrna. So because it carries a lot of what we call Scoville units, but a lot of heat. So when you get hit with one of these chemical irritant rounds, it'll cause your eyes to shut involuntarily. It will cause respiratory distress, and it will allow an individual time to get out of the house. And we're targeting the consumer market and the private security market. So whereas there are 18,500 law enforcement agencies in the U.S., there's 120 million households. We think it's also going to be very interesting to gun owners. So I myself am a gun owner. I own a number of handguns. But frankly, I don't know that I'm going to be really excited about pulling the trigger if somebody comes on my property. I know, however, that if I have a non-lethal weapon that can stop somebody, that I would have no hesitation to pull the trigger. And we think that this Byrna personal security device really fits the bill.
This is a really interesting space that you're in, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on Security Devices International. Thank you for taking some time with us, and all the best, Brian.
Thank you very much.
That was Brian Ganz of Security Devices International, their trading symbol CDZ on the CSE Exchange. That's it for this episode of NewlyTrading.com, the podcast. News on some of the newest publicly traded companies on the TSXV, OTC, and on the CSE exchanges. Newly Trading is brought to you by TheNewsWire.com, the most affordable newswire service in North America. Get started with your free trial. Not just any wire. We are TheNewsWire.com. NewlyTrading.com and this podcast are solely intended for information purposes. If you're considering investing in securities, always consult a professional advisor. I'm Jim Ripley.